Hey guys, this is Heroic Flamingo and welcome to my Guild Wars 2 class guide for the Elementalist. In this video I'm going to be looking at all of the weapons the Elementalist can use, as well as the individual weapon skills. I'll then be looking at the healing, utility and elite skills. I'll then move on to the unique profession mechanics for the Elementalist, before then moving on to the specializations and the individual traits within them to see how you can make yourself even more powerful. So if you're interested in playing as an Elementalist, or if you already are and you want to know more, sit tight and we'll get started right now. Okay, so before we go into the detail, I just want to give you a quick profession overview for the Elementalist. So the Elementalist is one of Guild Wars 2's scholar professions, and therefore wears light armour. Elementalists are multifaceted spellcasters who channel elemental forces, making fire, air, earth and water do their bidding. What they lack in physical toughness, they make up for in versatility and the ability to inflict massive damage. So the Elementalist is probably the closest to the standard mage or spellcaster that you would have in any other similar MMORPG like this. However, it focuses much more on the elements, so you can attune between the different elements, fire, air, water and earth, and then that will completely change your weapon skills. And, you know, for example, the fire's more based around damage, water's more based around healing, so it makes the Elementalist actually a really versatile class. So if you're interested in something that can be really powerful, do a lot of damage, but also could be a respectable healer or a support player in a group or something like that, and this is really good for you. It can be a little bit more complicated as it does have a lot of skills to learn. Like with every weapon set, you've got 4 different attunements, so you've effectively got 20 different weapon skills to use. That can get a little bit confusing, but I'm going to go through all of that right now so you can see it all. So the first thing I want to have a look at are the weapon skills. Okay, so the first thing I want to look at are the weapon skills. So I have here all of the weapons the Elementalist can use. There's obviously only 5 weapons here, so you're probably thinking there's not that many. But because of the 4 attunements, there's actually a lot of skills to get through. So I'm going to show you each weapon one by one, and I'll show you the skills for each of the 4 attunements for those weapons, and then I'll move on to the next one. So the first one we're going to look at is the two-hand staff. So this is obviously 5 weapon skills here, and once we've been through the 4 attunements, it will be 20 weapon skills in total to look at. So let's get going. So we're going to start in the fire attunement. So the fire attunement for the staff, our first ability is fireball. So cast a fireball that explodes on impact and hits multiple foes. Okay, so this is going to be a long range, so 1200 range, and it hits up to 3 targets in a radius of 180 when it hits the target. So let's try this out.
Vitality restored.
As you can see, that's decent damage there for a number 1 ability, which is nice. And it does hit a few enemies if they're close together as well, so that's good. So our number 2 ability is Lava Font, and this has a 4 3/4 second cooldown. So make lava erupt from the target area. So it's a ground target ability, hits up to 5 enemies with a duration of 6 seconds. So let's try this out. So if we place this down, we can do it from long range once again. Place it down under the target golem. You can see it's doing damage over time to all enemies in that area. Nice bit of damage as well, to be fair, with a nice bigger hit at the end. So that is that's a really good skill there, especially if you've got your enemies all grouped together. Your number 3 skill is Flame Burst and has an 8-second cooldown. So burn foes at the target location. So wherever your target is, it's going to burn them and up to 5 enemies in a radius of 240 around them. So that's going to do damage over time. Let's try this out. There you go, and it's set fire to them and would have done the same to everyone in a radius around them, and it's slowly going to kill them, as you can see, with the burning effect on them. So our number 4 ability is Burning Retreat, and this has a 16-second cooldown. So quickly roll backwards, leaving behind a line of fire that burns. So it's going to do a bit of damage, set fire to enemies, and the fire lasts for 8 seconds. So I'll show you what this looks like. So if we got up to the enemy, if we want to get away, so the enemies come up to us, say, and obviously we're ranged mainly, so we want to stay away from them. Press that number 4, jump back. We'll set a nice line of fire there, so if they try and follow you, they'll have to run straight through that line of fire, setting fire to them and any other enemies that cross it. So that's a pretty cool skill there for manoeuvring around on the battlefield. Your number 5 skill is Meteor Shower, and this is a 24-second cooldown. So cool down a meteor shower onto the target area. So it does big damage impacts 24 times, up to 3 targets a time, lasts for 9 seconds. It's ground targeted with a radius of 360, and you can do it from long range. So let's try it out. I mean, he's only got low health, so let's try it out. This guy's going to kill him anyway. So if I place that down here on someone who's actually going to feel it. Boom. Oh, there you go. Look at that. That's a massive radius anyway. So yeah, it's hitting him as well. Killed him. So big damage to everyone in the area. So that's a really powerful effect there. Obviously, it has got a long cooldown, but it's well worth it, and it's probably one of your best AoE abilities that you're going to find on this class. Alright, so still with the staff, we're going to move to the water attunement and have a look at these spells. So our number 1 ability is Water Blast. So spray a jet of water at your foe that splashes to heal nearby allies. Okay, so it's going to do a bit of damage to the enemy, but it's also going to heal allies that are nearby as well. So if I use this, you can see it's got a range of 1200. So it's going to do damage to them, and obviously healing any enemies, any allies around as well. So that's cool. Our number 2 ability is Ice Spike, which has a 6-second cooldown. Drop a giant ice spike on foes to make them vulnerable. So this is a ground target ability which you can do from long range, and it has a 300 radius, and it's going to do damage and inflict vulnerability to any foes in the area. So I can get it here, hit both of them. Bam, there you go. Vulnerability and damage to everyone in that area. So that's a nice offensive ability there. Number 3 is Geyser. So it says a 20-second cooldown. Create a geyser to heal nearby allies. So this is a healing spell. It's going to target up to 5 allies in a radius of a ground targeted radius, and it's going to last for 4 seconds. So if I place this down here, as we can see, we've got some buffs there, and it's going to heal all allies in that area. So you could place it down top yourself, or if your allies are over here fighting your enemies melee, you can drop it on their heads to give them a nice boost of healing. So good in a group situation there. Our number 4 ability is Frozen Ground, which has a 30-second cooldown. Coat the target area in ice, chilling foes that enter it. So we're going to put a nice ice field along the floor. We can do it from long range, ground target, once again, like most of these abilities are. So as we can see, chilled, so we're greatly reducing the movement speed. That's a good example there. And the ability speed, skill recharge rate of all enemies that enter that, so that's pretty cool. Lasts for 5 seconds as well. Our number 5 ability is Healing Rain, which has a 35-second cooldown. So cool down a Healing Rain on the target area, granting regeneration to allies and curing conditions once every 3 seconds. So this is a bit like the 5 for the fire attunement, but the opposite. So instead of doing damage, it's going to heal and give regen and remove conditions to allies in the area. So let's just show you what this looks like. Big radius there, all allies going to get nice healing rain. There you go, regeneration, cures conditions, what's not to like. Obviously it's got a big 35-second cooldown, but great there if you want to heal your allies. Moving to the air attunement. So our number 1 ability is Chain Lightning. So hit multiple foes with arcs of chain lightning. So let's try this out. We're done from long range. Boom. There you go. As you can see, good example there. Bouncing between all these enemies. So it's got quite a large radius there, and hits all of them. So that's pretty cool there. Our number 2 ability, Lightning Surge. This is a 4 3/4 second cooldown. So charge a lightning surge that damages and blinds foes near your target when it discharges. So it can be done from long range. It hits up to 5 enemies around them and does damage and blinds them. So cool. There you go. So blindness on them and all enemies around them, and that can be done from long range. So our 3rd ability is Gust, which has a 20-second cooldown. So push foes backwards with a burst of air. So it can be done from long range, but it knocks them back 400 and hits up to 5 targets. So if they're coming close to you, you might want to use this and say, no, get back. Nice. So that pushes them and any other enemies around backwards, which means that you can get a little bit of distance between you, which is good. Number 4 is Windborne Speed, which has a 16-second cooldown. So you and nearby allies gain swiftness while curing, crippled, immobilized, and chilled. So you're going to gain swiftness to you and your allies, so you move around quicker, and you're going to be curing any of these movement impairing effects on you and your allies as well, on a radius of 300 around you, up to 5 allies. So, boom, there you go, as you can see. And that makes us and allies move quicker whilst curing those movement impairing conditions as well. Number 5 is Static Field, which has a 24-second cooldown. Create an electrical field that stuns foes crossing it. So it's got a ground target ability. It can be done from long range, lasts for 4 seconds, does a bit of damage and stuns enemies that cross it. So as you can see, if I place this down here, there you go. So that's going to hit them and it's going to stun. There you go, any enemies that come into it. So if you place that down right in the middle of them and they're all coming towards you, they're going to be getting stunned, which means they're not going to be able to do a lot, which means that you can put a bunch of AoE things on their head to do a bunch of damage, which would be awesome. Alright, the 4th and final attunement here, so the Earth attunement for the staff. Our first ability, so our number 1 ability is Stoning. So hurl a rock and weaken your foe. Okay, so as you can see, long range, doing some damage, and puts weakness on the enemy as well, which is cool. So you've got that effect there, and that's stack up. So your number 2 ability is Eruption, which has a 6-second cooldown. So shake the ground until it erupts and damages foes. So as you can see, this can do damage in a target area, ground targeted, up to 5 enemies in a radius of 300, and it's going to inflict bleeding and cripple. So that's pretty good. There you go. So that's going to stick there, bam, there you go, that explodes at the end. Bleeding and cripple on any enemies in the area when it explodes at the end, so that's a nice one. So the third one is Magnetic Aura. So reflect projectiles with magnetic energy, and this has a 30-second cooldown. Let's try this out. Boom, there you go, that just creates a little bubble around you, which reflects projectiles for 4 seconds, and then I think there was another ability you could activate by pressing it, but we just missed that. But yeah, that's pretty cool because that's going to mean that projectiles are going to be blocked, so it's just a good defensive ability there. Your number 4, Unsteady Ground, which has a 30-second cooldown. So create unsteady ground that foes cannot cross. So it lasts for 4 seconds, hits up to 10 enemies with a range of 1200. So as you can see, if I stick that on them, any enemies across that, I don't know if they're actually classed as crossing it, they're not because they're just standing on it. So any foes that cross it though, it's well, they can't cross it basically, so that's going to stop them. So if you want to keep them at range to control them and then drop a bunch of AoE on their head, that'd be a good ability. Number 5, Shockwave. This has a 25-second cooldown. So create a shockwave that bleeds and immobilizes your target. Okay, so it's got some damage, it's got bleeding, immobilize, hits up to 5 enemies. Let's see how this works now. So, boom, there you go. So shoots a wave, so anyone that hits along the way is going to be immobilized for a couple of seconds, have bleeding on them, and they hit up to 5 enemies. Do a bit of damage as well, so that's a cool one. Alright, so now I've equipped the main hand dagger. So let's have a look at all the skills on this. So we're in the fire attunement again, and obviously this is our first 3 skills as it's a main hand weapon. So our number 1 skill on the fire attunement is Dragon's Claw. So let's try this out. So this flings fire in a claw-shaped spread at your foe. So this is going to be, it's only 400 range, so it's not too far away. It's going to hit up to 5 enemies. Each projectile is going to do a certain amount of damage, so that can hit quite a few enemies there that are in that radius. Our number 2 is Drake's Breath, which is a 4 3/4 second cooldown. So spray a cone of fire at foes while on the move. So once again, 400 range, so relatively close to mid-range. Hits up to 5 targets, does a decent amount of damage and sets enemies on fire. And this works like that. You can move around and hit different enemies while you're using it, but you have to be relatively close, so you might want to sort of move around, setting fire to each of the enemies, doing a bit of damage over time as well as some initial damage as well. Your number 3 is Burning Speed, which has a 12-second cooldown. So slide forward and blast the area, leaving behind a line of fire that burns foes. Okay, so it's 600 range. We're going to slide towards the enemy, we're going to do a decent amount of damage and set fire to them, and up to 5 targets. And the firewall is going to last for 6 seconds, so let's try this out. So, boom, there you go. So you're going to jump through the enemy, put a firewall, and look, that's a decent amount of damage there as well, which is good. And everyone in that area will be set on fire, so that's cool. So next up is the water attunement for the dagger. So we've got Vapor Blade as the number 1 ability. Cast a Vapor Blade that inflicts vulnerability and returns to you. So this is mid-range, so 600 range. So you're going to throw this dagger. It's going to hit up to 5 enemies, and it's going to inflict vulnerability on the enemy.
Health
So you
increasing.
can see, you can stack your vulnerability up by doing that as an auto attack. But yeah, it does a decent amount of damage. That's a cool number 1 ability there. So number 2 is Cone of Cold, which has a 10-second cooldown. So spray an icy blast in a cone that damages foes and heals allies. So a bit like that one on the fire one. So we can move around while doing it, but it's going to damage foes and heal allies. So I can move around, damage the foes while I'm spraying that out, but obviously you're going to be healing your allies as well. So our number 3 ability is Frozen Burst, which has a 15-second cooldown. So detonate a burst of ice that chills nearby foes. So this is going to detonate a burst around you, I believe, or around the foe, sorry, which is going to damage enemies, chill them, and hit up to 5 targets. So let's see. Is this? Alright, yeah, so it's around me. So there you go. It hits a decent radius there, and as you can see, it's chilled the enemies, puts effects on them as well as doing a decent amount of damage there. So that's a cool one. Looking at the air attunement, our number 1 ability is Lightning Whip, which is lash your foe with lightning. So this is range 240, so you're going to be pretty close for this one. You're going to hit up to 3 enemies. As you can see, literally like a lightning whip, which is a really cool one actually. So that's nice. Our number 2 is Convergence, which has a 6.5-second cooldown. So charge the air to shock foes around you after a short delay. Inflict weakness on enemies and gain fury for each foe struck. So it's going to hit up to 5 enemies in a radius of 240 around us. There's a 1-second delay before it triggers, but it's going to grant us fury, and it's going to give enemies weakness. So it's going to buff us, put conditions on them, as well as doing a bit of damage as well. So let's try this out. So after the delay, bam, everyone in that area is going to get hit by that, and they're going to get the conditions, the weakness conditions, and we're going to get the fury buff. And number 3 is Shocking Aura, which has a 20-second cooldown. So envelop yourself with electrical energy that stuns nearby foes if they attack you. Each attacker can be affected by this only once every 2 seconds. So it lasts for 4 seconds and stun nearby attacking foes with an electric shock. So anyone that attacks you while you've got this, it's going to get stunned. So that's cool. Obviously you're not going to be able to try that out with the target guns, but just to show you, there you go, you can press it again to cause your Shocking Aura to violently explode as well. So if no one's hitting you, which always seems to be the case, you press that and suddenly people decide not to hit you, press it again and it will do a nice little explosion to do a bit of damage as well. Alright, so the 4th and final attunement is the Earth attunement. So our first ability is Impale, which is spear your foes on a giant stone pike, which is going to damage and bleed enemies from relatively short to mid-range, so sort of from this sort of distance. That's pretty cool. Nice, there you go. So damage and bleeding, which is cool. And number 2 ability, Ring of Earth, which has a 6-second cooldown. So use the earth to launch yourself into the air and strike foes in a small radius. Deliver a larger ring of earthen spike upon impact. Okay, so we're going to launch ourselves into the air. So we're going to strike foes, and we're going to do bleeding and cripple. So let's have a look at what this looks like. Try this out. Cool, there you go. So big smash around you, so like bleeding and cripple to enemies around you. Nice bit of damage as well, so that's a nice one. And our third ability here is Earthen Rush, which has an 18-second cooldown. So quickly dash along the ground, summoning spikes along the way and then delivering an area strike. So it's a leap ability which is from 600 range, so sort of mid-range. It's going to move along the ground really quickly, evading attacks. Going to make spikes along the way and then deliver an area strike at the end of it. So you're probably going to do some bit of damage to enemies along the way, and it should immobilize as well. So let's try this out. Boom, there you go, nice. And then immobilize and damage the enemy as well as any enemy along the way. So that's pretty cool ability there as well. Okay, so I've now equipped the main hand scepter, which is our long range main hand magic weapon. So let's give this a go. So I'm starting off with a fire attunement again. So our number 1 ability on the scepter is Flame Strike. So strike your foe with flame and create an area that delivers a lesser attack a short time later. So we're going to do damage from range, so up to 900 range, so relatively quite long range. Going to create an area that delivers a lesser strike after a short time as well. So if they stay in the same place, they're going to be anyone in that area is going to take a bit of damage as well. So it's also going to set them on fire, which, as you can imagine, with the fire attunement, most things do. Boom. There you go. As you can see, boom, and then there's a lesser strike a bit later on as well as some damage over time. So overall, it hits a couple of times as well as doing damage over time. So that's a nice number 1 ability there. Number 2 is Dragon's Tooth, which has a 6-second cooldown. So this is a ground target ability, which is drop an explosive Dragon's Tooth on your foe. So it can be done from long range, and it's going to do a radius of 180. It's going to hit up to 5 enemies, do good damage, and do burning damage over time as well. So let's try this out on this guy. Boom. There you go. Nice animation. Sets him on fire. Drops a fiery Dragon Tooth on the head. Number 3, Phoenix, which has a 20-second cooldown. So release a fiery phoenix that attacks foes in a line before exploding and returning to you, curing a condition and granting you vigor. So the fiery phoenix is going to attack foes in a line, so if they're all lined up you can do it from relatively long range, and then it's going to come back, it's going to cure a condition on us and grant vigor as well. So it's going to do burning damage on the enemy as well as those positive effects on us. Can hit up to 5 enemies. Let's see how this goes. Alright, so you ground target over there, flies towards him, boom, which did a big damage to us as well as setting them on fire and giving us a nice buff as well. Next up is the water attunement. So our number 1 ability, Ice Shards. So fire 3 ice shards at your foe. Okay, you got in the way, but yeah, you get the point. So it does 3 loads of damage there and can be done from long range. Number 2 ability is Shatterstone, which has a 3-second cooldown. Cast a Shatterstone that will explode at the target area. So it's going to be a ground target ability which is going to explode, do a decent amount of damage, put vulnerability on the enemy and up to 5 other enemies in a radius of 180. So let's have a look. Get out of the way. Boom. Bam, there you go. It's going to explode, vulnerability, and that's going to have that effect on all enemies in the area. Number 3 is Water Trident, and that has a 20-second cooldown. So cast a Water Trident that damages foes and heals allies. So it's going to be a ground target ability again, which is going to do damage to enemies and healing to allies, as well as putting some regen, hitting up to 3 enemy targets and 5 allied targets in a 180 radius. Sorry, so try that out. Boom, there you go. So that's going to be, if you've got a big area there with a lot of enemies and maybe a lot of allies as well, you're going to be damaging the enemies while helping the allies with some healing as well. So that's a bit of a double bubble. So the air attunement. So the first one is Arc Lightning, which is cast an arc of electricity at your foe. So stage 1, 2 and 3 damage there. Number of targets. Let's try this out. So there you go, 1, 2. So as you can see, it gets more and more powerful as it goes along. See stage 1, 2 and 3. If you let it get to stage 3, it does a lot of damage, hits up to 3 enemies, lasts for 3 seconds. So that's a really, to be fair, that's a really powerful number 1 ability there. Towards the back end of it, it's doing a lot of damage there for a number 1 ability, so that's nice. Number 2, Lightning Strike, which has a 5-second cooldown. Strike your foe with lightning, so simple as that. Doesn't do anything special. Long range, does some damage. Let's try this out. Bam, there you go. It's got a relatively short 5-second cooldown. It literally is an instant one that you can just cast. Bam, there you go. Just nice bolt of lightning down on their head. Number 3, Blinding Flash. So this is a 10-second cooldown. Blind your foe with a flash of light. So you can do this from 900 range, and it's going to mean that their next attack misses. So there you go, blindness on the foe, so the next attack won't be able to hit. So particularly good to use right before they're about to use a big attack. So Earth Attunement. So our number 1 ability is Stone Shards. Fling stone daggers at your foe to bleed them. So 900 range, it's going to do a nice bit of damage and also a couple of stacks of bleeding as well. There you go, 3 loads and then 3 stacks of bleeding, 3 loads of damage, so that's cool. So our second one is Rock Barrier, which has a 15-second cooldown. Envelop yourself in a stony barrier that improves toughness. So it lasts for 30 seconds and it ups our toughness by 250, which that's cool. And yeah, so you know, you can use that anytime. So if I work that out, it's going to give us some more toughness. And then while I've got that active, I can use hurl, which is hurl the rocks from your barrier at your foe, which is going to do damage and bleeding from long range. So let me try this out. Boom. Nice, there you go. So obviously you're getting rid of your barrier there, but you're turning it into damage. So it can be a defensive ability, but it can also be turned into an offensive ability as well. And our third and final ability on this is Dust Devil. This has a 15-second cooldown. So blind your foes with a blast of sand. So this can be long range, hits up to 5 enemies, does a bit of damage, and blinds all the enemies, meaning their next attack misses. Oh, there you go. So the sand blinds them, and then him and all his mates around them, they're going to miss their next attack on you and your allies. So that's a nice one there as well. So now I've equipped the Offhand Dagger, which is going to be our 4 and 5 skills, and we'll go through each of the attunements. So with the fire attunement, we've got Ring of Fire, which has a 15-second cooldown. Damage nearby foes with a ring of fire, burning foes that pass through it. So this is going to be a radius of 240. It's going to do an initial amount of burning as well as extra burning to any targets who come through it, and it's going to last for 5 seconds. So let's try this out. Cool. There you go. So it's going to burning to enemies inside it, and then anyone who tries to come into it, like this guy, good example, he set himself on fire as well. So not very smart. Our next ability is Fire Grab, and this is a 25-second cooldown. So damage foes in a cone in front of you. Deal more damage to burning foes. So if you use this with enemies that are on fire, so if you've already used this to set them on fire, you can use your number 5 to deal even more damage. So it does damage even if they're not burning, but it does about double if they are burning. So you definitely want to do that. It's going to be relatively short range, 300, and hit up to 5 targets. So let's try this out. So bam, there you go. So that does a nice bit of damage there, and like I said, if you use a burning ability first, you're going to be doubling your damage there, so do think about that. So, water attunement. We got Frost Aura, which has a 30-second cooldown. So protect yourself with frost armor that reduces incoming damage by 10%. While active, it chills foes that hit you. Each attacker can be affected by this only once per second. So Frost Aura lasts for 4 seconds, means you have minus 10% incoming damage. Chilled for 2 seconds to the enemies as well. So we're going to get that frost armor, and we're going to reduce that damage, and it's going to chill any foes that hit you. So it's just an extra bit of defense there. So I use that. Any foes that hit me are going to be chilled, and then I can use that again to turn it into an offensive ability as well. So our next one is Cleansing Wave, which has a 30-second cooldown. So heal yourself and nearby allies, curing conditions. So this is a nice extra healing ability here. So does a little bit of healing on yourself and nearby allies, cures your conditions on up to 5 allies in a 240 radius around you. So there you go, a nice wave, cleansing wave there for you and your allies. Air attunement. You've got Ride the Lightning, which has a 30-second cooldown. Ride the lightning to your foe, and strike all nearby foes with an electrical burst. If a foe is hit by the burst, the skill's recharge is halved. Okay, so this can be done from long range, and obviously it'll make you go towards them. Do a radius of 180, it's going to hit 5 targets. So it's going to strike all nearby foes, and if a foe is hit by it, this skill's recharge is half. So although it's got a 30-second recharge, it will only be 15 seconds if you hit an enemy. So let's try this out. Boom, there you go. So if you go straight at the enemy there, nice bit of vulnerability there, hits them, and like I said, it's only doing a 15-second cooldown because we hit the enemy. Next up, we've got Updraft, which has a 40-second cooldown. Gain swiftness from a gust of wind that launches nearby foes. So it's going to give us swiftness to increase our movement speed for 10 seconds. It's going to launch the enemies back up to 5 targets, and we're also going to evade for 1 second as well. So let's try this out. So there you go. So it flips back, knocking them and any other enemies back, and just gets a bit of distance between us and them, so we can use some of our ranged abilities. So next up, we've got the Earth attunement. So Earthquake, which has a 30-second cooldown. Trigger a quake at your location, knocking down foes and dealing massive damage. So it's going to knock them down for a couple of seconds, do decent damage, and hit up to 5 enemies and a radius of 240 around you. So you can only really use this when you're quite close to the enemy, so bear that in mind. it's a radius around you, not the target. So as you can see, knocks them down, bit of vulnerability and some damage there. So this last ability is Churning Earth, which has a 30-second cooldown. So make the earth churn, crippling nearby foes before unleashing a seismic wave that damages and bleeds them. So we're going to do a decent amount of damage, bleeding, cripple, hits up to 5 targets in a radius of 360. Okay, so let's try that out. So there you go, so boom. So if you let that play out, that's going to be decent. That's going to put a lot of bleeding on the enemy there and do a nice amount of damage to up to 5 enemies there. Last but not least, we have the offhand focus. So let's start with the fire attunement again. So our number 4 skill here is Flame Wall, which has a 20-second cooldown. So create a wall of flame at the target area that burns foes. So we can do this from long range. It's ground targeted. It's going to create a wall of flame, and it's going to obviously do damage to up to 5 enemies. Last for 8 seconds, and also set them on fire as well. Do a little bit of burning damage over time. So let's try this out. There you go. As we can see, anyone that is on top of that wall or tries to go through that wall is going to take damage and be set on fire as well. So that's a nice one there. A bit damage over time. The next ability is Fire Shield, which has a 25-second cooldown. So envelop yourself in a fiery shield that burns foes and grants might each time you're struck. So it's going to last for 4 seconds. You're going to get might anytime anyone attacks you, and they're going to be set on fire as well. Let's just try this out. Boom. And if you want to cause an explosion, you can. So you can press it again. So obviously, if no one's hitting you or you're getting towards the end of that 4 seconds, press it again. You're going to shoot out a nice explosion to do damage and burning to all targets around you as well. Okay, so the water attunement. So Freezing Gust, and this has a 25-second cooldown. Chill your foe for a brief time. So it's going to do a bit of damage to the foe as well as chilling them. So reduce movement speed, reduce recharge, skill recharge rate, and you can do that from long range. So let's try this out. Well, there you go. As you can see, just put chilled on them there. Nice one. And the second one here is Comet, which has a 25-second cooldown. So drop a comet of ice on target foe, damaging and dazing foes in the area. So it's going to hit up to 5 enemies in a radius of 180 around the target. It's going to do a nice bit of damage as well as dazing them for a couple of seconds. Boom, there you go. There you go, daze, and that's going to be everyone in that, everyone near that enemy is going to have that same effect as well. Time for the air attunement. So Swirling Winds, and this has a 30-second cooldown. Create a swirling wind that blocks projectiles. It's going to last for 6 seconds, and it's going to create a 360 radius around you which blocks projectiles. So no projectiles are going to be able to enter this area that we've put down there, so that's pretty awesome there. Protecting you and your group. Next we have Gale, which has a 40-second cooldown. So knock down your foe with a charged wind blast. So this can be done for 900 range. It's unblockable, and it knocks down the enemy for 3 seconds. So, boom, there you go. Knocks them down. Nice long one there. So you can drop a bunch more skills on their head, and they can't do anything about it because they've been knocked down. Lastly, we have the Earth attunement. So, first up, Magnetic Wave, which has a 25-second cooldown. So damage foes. Cure 3 of your conditions and reflect projectiles with a magnetic surge. So a few things there. So it's going to be it's going to damage enemies, it's going to cure our conditions, and it's going to reflect projectiles. It's going to cripple enemies, hit up to 5 targets, and the reflection lasts for 3 seconds. So let's try this out. I'm not sure whether it's on ourselves. Yes, it's on the target. So as you can see, so it's going to damage foes, and then we're going to get cured conditions as well. So that's a couple of effects there. And finally, we've got Obsidian Flesh, which has a 60-second cooldown. So envelop yourself in stony armor, making yourself invulnerable. So it's going to last for 3 seconds, and it means that you're not going to be able to take any damage for those 3 seconds. So you can either use it to escape from combat, or maybe make it so you can do a heal when you're close to dying, or even just so you can sponge a bunch of damage if they're going to be using a big attack. Let's try this out. Nice there. So as you can see, that one, it sort of channels it over the 3 seconds, Can't take any damage for that amount of time. But it does have a 60-second cooldown, so that does take a while. Okay, so that is actually all of the weapon skills for the Elementalist. So the next thing I want to have a look at are the healing skills. Alright, so the next thing I want to look at are the Elementalist's healing skills. So first up, we've got Glyph of Elemental Harmony, which has a 25-second cooldown. So glyphs are abilities that change their effect based on which attunement you're in. So first up, we're in the Fire attunement. So it's going to heal you, and you're going to gain a boon based on your attunement. So in the Fire attunement, you gain the Might boon, which gives you more power. In the Water attunement, you gain Regen, which means you're going to get healing over time, so it's just a bit of extra healing. Air attunement, you gain Swiftness, which increases your movement speed. And in Earth attunement, you're going to get Protection, which is going to decrease your incoming damage. So they're all going to do the same amount of healing, but they're all going to have another effect. Well, technically Water attunement does do a bit more healing because it's got Regen, but they all give you healing and a buff. So let's just show you what that looks like. Boom, there you go. So we can see we've got a buff on us now, a good heal there, and a 25-second cooldown. The next healing skill is Ether Renewal, which has an 18-second cooldown. And this is a cantrip ability. So cure a condition and heal yourself with every pulse. So this is going to pulse 8 times. It's going to remove a condition and heal you on each pulse. So let's have a look to see how that goes. So, boom. As we can see, you can't really see it too much there, but effectively it's going to pulse 8 times, and it's going to heal you on each pulse there. So it doesn't take too long either. So you're going to get a decent amount of healing. It just takes a few seconds, but you're also going to remove conditions as well, so you get that added benefit. Overall, I think the best thing about this ability is probably the fact that it's only got an 18-second cooldown, so that is maybe a benefit to having it. It may take a little bit longer to cast it, but you do get that nice short cooldown as well, which can be very useful in a healing skill. So next up, we've got Signet of Restoration, which has a 25-second cooldown. So Signet abilities are abilities that have a passive ability and a more powerful ability when you activate it. So the passive ability, so just by having this on your bar, you get it grants you health every time you cast a spell. So every time you cast a spell, you're going to get a bit of healing, and as you can see, that's like a buff there. So that's pretty cool, because obviously as an Elementalist, you're going to be casting a hell of a lot of spells, so you're going to be getting a nice constant stream of healing there, making you a little bit more difficult to kill. But it does have the active ability that if you do need it, you can use it and you get a bigger heal, albeit probably not as big as a normal healing ability, but you do get the added passive. Do bear in mind with a passive ability that when you use it, as I'll demonstrate now, you lose the passive benefit while it's on cooldown, so do bear that in mind. And it's got a 25-second cooldown. Next up, we've got Arcane Brilliance, which has a 15-second cooldown. So this is an arcane ability. It's blast the area, hitting foes with critical damage and healing yourself. Healing effectiveness is increased per target hit. So this is quite unusual for a healing skill that actually does do damage to enemies. So you're going to get an initial heal. It's going to do damage to enemies around you in a radius of 360, hitting up to 5 targets. And it's going to increase your healing by 20% per target. So if you hit 5 targets, it's going to increase your healing by 100%, so double it, as well as doing damage to the enemies as well. So let's demonstrate this now with some enemies nearby. Oh, boom, there you go. So it's going to shoot out, do a little bit of damage, not massive, just a little bit of damage to the enemies around you, as well as, you know, doing a little bit of healing there as well. So that's cool. Okay, so that is all of the healing skills for the Elementalist. So the next thing we want to have a look at are the utility skills. Okay, so now I want to have a look at the Elementalist utility skills. So these are your 7, 8 and 9 abilities here, and there's quite a few to choose from. So I'm going to go through all of them one by one. I'm going to have a look at what they do, and I'm going to show them off. So I'm going to equip the first 3 now, and let's get started. Okay, so the first one is a conjure ability, and these are pretty cool. So conjure abilities conjure up a particular weapon which replaces all of your 5 weapon skills. They're also ground targeted, so you place a copy of that weapon down on the ground where you target it, and your allies can pick it up so they can also access those weapon skills. So it's pretty cool in a group situation because you'll be able to put a weapon down that your allies can use. But even if you're on your own, you can still use it, and it will give you a copy of the weapon as well. So you've got 5 new skills to choose from for each of these Conjure skills. So the first one is Conjure Flame Axe, which has a 60-second cooldown. So manifest a lava axe in your hands and at the target location. Wielders of the weapon gain increased power and condition damage. So it lasts for 30 seconds and it gives you extra power and extra condition damage. So I'm going to place this down now and I'm going to show off these new skills it gives you. I'm not going to go through every skill one by one because there's quite a few Conjure skills and we'll be here all day to do all of these. So what I'll do is I'll place this down and I'll quickly show you what we got. Alright, so we've got Lava Axe, which is just to throw an axe at this guy. Explosive Lava Axe, which is a nice AoE, which damages a few enemies there. We've got Burning Retreat, which is roll backwards and leave a nice trail of fire. We've got Ring of Fire, which creates a nice ring of fire around you there. And then we've got number 5, which is Flame Leap, which is obviously one to leap at the enemy, doing a nice bit of damage. And all of these obviously add in a bunch of burning on the enemy and doing a lot of extra damage. So next up is Conjure Frostbow, which has a 60-second cooldown once again. So manifest a frostbow in your hands and at the target location. Wielders of this weapon gain increased condition duration and healing power. So it lasts for 30 seconds and you get extra condition duration and healing power. So I'm going to try this out once again. So exactly the same as the last one. I place one of them down and one of them appears in my hand. So let's do this and have a look at the skills it gives you. Alright, so our number 1 is Water Arrow. Our number 2, Frost Volley, which is going to add vulnerability onto the target and shoot a volley of arrows. Our third one, Frost Fan, shoots a fan of arrows and chills the enemy. Our fourth one, Frost Storm. There's a nice AoE effect here, which also bleeds the enemy, as well as damaging all the enemies in the area. And number 5, Deep Freeze, which chills, stuns the enemy there. There you go, so they're stuck in place and they can't move. So there's a lot of cool effects there and quite a lot of damage as well, so that's a really cool one. And then next up we've got Conjure Lightning Hammer, which has a 60-second cooldown once again. Same as always, 1200 range, 30-second duration, but this one means that you manifest a lightning hammer in your hands and at the target location. Wielders of this weapon gain increased precision and ferocity. So let's try it out and see what the skills do. Place that down. Alright, number 1 ability is Lightning Swing, which is bash your foe. So you want to be doing this from close range. Lightning Leap, so you leap at the foe and gain quickness. Number 3, Wind Blast. Launch your foe back with a big smash. Number 4, Invoke Lightning. Randomly strike this random area with lightning. So everyone around you gets hit. And then number 5, Static Field. Manifest an electrical field that stuns foes crossing it. There you go, so that creates a nice stop. The next few utility skills on here now. We've got the final Conjure skill here, and this is Conjure Earth Shield. So 60-second cooldown, 1200 range, as we know, lasts for 30 seconds. And this one manifests a magnetic shield in your hands and at the target location. Wielders of the weapon gain increased toughness and vitality, so this is going to give you more armor and more health. So let's have a look at what skills it gives you. Alright, so our number 1 ability has to be done from close range. Shield Smack, which hits the enemy and bleeds them. Stone Sheath, which bleeds the enemy there if they hit you, but you have to block them. Magnetic Surge, so dazes the foes. Magnetic Shield, which pulls nearby foes with magnetic force, as you can see, gives you protection. And number 5, Fortify, to envelop yourself in a shield. And you're invulnerable for 3 seconds. So some really good defensive abilities there, as well as a couple of offensive ones as well. Alright, so moving on to cantrip abilities. So we've got Cleansing Fire, which has a 30-second cooldown. So cure conditions and burn foes. So as simple as, it's going to be a radius of 240. It's going to hit up to 5 enemies. It's going to remove 3 conditions from yourself, and it's going to burn enemies. So go. So as you can see, anyone who's in that radius is going to set fire to them, do a bit of damage, cure our conditions at the same time. Next up, Mist Form, which has a 75-second cooldown. So morph into an invulnerable vaporous mist for a brief time. So it lasts for 3 seconds, it breaks stun, increases your movement speed by 66% and you'll be invulnerable to damage. So let's try this out. Alright, so we can move around. So we can use this to move around in combat, get away if we're struggling. But basically we can't be hurt. We move extra fast. So our next 3 utility skills, we've got Lightning Flash, which has a 35-second cooldown. So this is a ground target ability, which allows you to teleport to the target area. So it does do damage, to be fair. So if you teleport to where an enemy is, it does damage. But it can also be used to teleport away from enemies, of course. So wherever I go there, so bam, there you go. It's going to do a bit of damage. It's going to teleport there. So you can use it to teleport towards your enemies or away from your enemies, whatever suits you. Next up, we've got our final cantrip ability, which is Armor of Earth, which has a 60-second cooldown. Protect yourself with Earth armor and gain protection and stability. So it breaks stun, lasts for 6 seconds, and gives you protection, which reduces incoming damage, and stability, which stops you from being knocked down and pushed back and all of those things. So let's try that out. There you go. You can see that around us there. We've got the buffs on us, and obviously we're protecting ourselves and taking less damage. So next up we've got our first Signet ability here, so Signet of Fire. So the passive on this is that it improves our critical chance. So just by having this on our bar, we're going to improve our critical chance there. And then by activating it, we'll burn our target and nearby foes. So it can hit up to 5 targets from long range in a radius of 240. Sets fire to them and does damage. So let's try this out on this guy. Boom, there you go. So everyone in that area will take damage and set fire, which is pretty cool. But do bear in mind that while that's on cooldown, you won't have access to the passive ability. So we've got a few more Signet abilities to choose from here. So our first one here is Signet of Water, which has a 20-second cooldown. So the passive is that it reduces incoming condition duration. And the active is that it damages and chills foes while healing and reviving allies in an area. So it's ground targeted, so everyone in that 240 radius, it's going to affect up to 5 enemies. So you're going to be damaging and chilling all the enemies, but you're also going to be healing and reviving allies in the area. So a bit of both there, which is pretty cool. So let me try that out. So if I stick that down there, boom, there you go. So it's going to be healing our allies and damaging and chilling enemies. So that's a pretty cool one. But you'll obviously lose your passive while that's on cooldown. Next up, Signet of Air, which has a 25-second cooldown. So the passive is that it grants a 25% increase in movement speed. So just by having this on your bar, look, you're always going to have a nice movement speed increase. So that's pretty cool. And then the active one is that you blind your target and nearby foes. So it can be done from long range. It breaks stun and hits up to 5 enemies in a 240 radius, putting vulnerability on them as well as blindness so they miss their next attack. So let's try that out. Boom, there you go. Nice instant ability there, vulnerability and blindness to all enemies in that area. So our final Signet ability is Signet of Earth, and this has a 25-second cooldown. So the passive is that it improves toughness, which means that you'll be able to take more damage, just making you a little bit tankier. And then by activating it, you're going to immobilize and bleed your foe. So you can do it from long range, but it's going to stick bleeding and immobilize on the enemy, as well as doing a bit of damage. So if I do that now, boom, there you go. So bleeding, immobilize, so they can't move, but you obviously lose your passive while that's on cooldown. Okay, so now we've got a few glyph utility skills. So glyph skills are skills that will change effect depending on which attunement you're in. So at the moment we're in fire attunement, and then when we switch between them, we'll see that the effect that these glyphs do will change. The overall ability is generally the same, so we'll have a look at that now. So the first one is Glyph of Elemental Power, which has a 30-second cooldown. So this is inflict conditions on your next few strikes based on your attunement. Each strike deals increased damage. So for 25 seconds, your next 5 strikes are going to basically they're going to have an extra effect on the enemy depending on your attunement. Activating this does also break stun, so bear that in mind. So our next strikes will inflict burning when we're in the fire attunement. If we go to the water attunement, it will inflict chilled on the enemy. Air attunement is going to inflict vulnerability, and then the earth attunement is going to inflict bleeding. But every other part of the skill is the same. So I'm going to try it on the fire attunement here to show you it with the burning ability. So I need to quickly stick a weapon on here so I can hit them to demonstrate this. So if I use that now, so my next 5 attacks are going to inflict burning. People keep getting killed. As you can see, I'm inflicting burning on the enemy with those 5 attacks, so that's pretty cool there. The next one is Firestorm, and this is a 25-second cooldown. So create a firestorm at the target area. Okay, so it's a ground target ability with a 240 radius, lasts for 10 seconds, hits 5 enemies, and does burning damage. If I go into water attunement, this is now Ice Storm. It's very similar, but it's going to do damage and it's going to chill the enemy. Air attunement, you get Lightning Storm. Once again, very similar but vulnerability. And in the Earth attunement, you're going to get Sandstorm, which is going to do the same sort of thing, but it's also going to bleed and blind the enemies in the area. So if we go back to Firestorm and try this out. So if I place this down in this guy's head, so we can see nice Firestorm there. We've got some burning on the enemy, as well as, to be fair, a lot of damage to anyone in that area. So that's actually a really cool ability. And 10 seconds is actually quite a long time, so that's really cool. And it's only got a 25-second cooldown, so that's not too bad. Our next one is Glyph of Lesser Elementals. So this is a 40-second cooldown. So summon a Lesser Fire Elemental. So this is going to last for 120 seconds, and this Lesser Fire Elemental is going to basically deal damage. But if I switch to Water Attunement, it's going to be a Lesser Water Elemental, and it's going to deal damage and chill enemies, same duration. Air Attunement is going to be a Lesser Air Elemental. It's going to deal damage and grant swiftness. And in the Earth Attunement, it's a Lesser Earth Elemental that's going to deal damage and is hard to kill. So all of these last for 2 minutes, which is pretty awesome. But they also, you know, have slightly different effects depending on which attunement you're in. So if I go to the Fire Attunement, this one's generally going to do the most damage, but not maybe have any other effects. Let's try this out now, shall we? So there you go, I've got my Fire Elemental there. So if I attack this enemy, and you'll see, there you go, so the Fire Elemental was setting fire to everyone around it. So that's pretty cool there, and that's going to last for 2 whole minutes. So the next 3 utility skills, we've got our final Glyph skill here. So Renewal of Fire, which has a 90-second cooldown. So it can be done from long range and affects a radius of 180. So revive an ally, you're revived the next time you're downed. So it's going to revive an ally, which is good. So if an ally's down, it's going to revive them, and you're revived the next time you're downed. So that's pretty cool. So that lasts for 15 seconds, will revive when downed. So if you go down within 15 seconds of this, you will be able to come straight back up. So that's pretty awesome. So if you know you're going to die, this might be quite a useful one to use. So it's ground target, so you obviously put it on the area where the enemy the ally needs to be revived. Let's have a quick look at what the differences are on Water Attunement. So this is Renewal of Water, so it's quite different. It's revive an ally with full health. So this is going to completely revive an ally, ground target ability, and it's going to heal them up to full health. In Air Attunement, it's Renewal of Air, which is revive and teleport an ally to your location. So it's going to get the enemy up and it's going to teleport them straight over to you. Earth Attunement, you get Renewal of Earth, which revives allies around you. So this can revive up to 3 enemies in a radius of 360 around you. So I'm going to go to Fire Attunement, and this one pretty straightforward. So I'm going to place it down on my downed ally's head. It's going to revive them, and then for 15 seconds I get an effect that if I'm downed in that 15 seconds, I'm going to be automatically brought back up. So that's pretty cool. Next up, we have an arcane ability called Arcane Wave, which has a 2-second cooldown. It doesn't have a 2-second cooldown, sorry. It's got 2 counts, and the count recharges 30 seconds, and then there's a 2-second cooldown between those counts. So this is blast foes in the target area with an energy wave for critical damage. So let's see, it's a ground target ability. You can do it from long range, radius 360. And it's going to blast them all, and it's going to do quite a lot of damage to enemies in that area. And like I said, we've got a couple of counts on this one. So that big area, to be fair as well. All these guys are in it. Boom, there you go. And 2 seconds later I can use it again, but obviously then you've got to wait for that 30-second count recharge to come back. That's pretty cool, so you can use those two things sort of pretty much instantly. So it's a nice bit of extra damage you can do on a bunch of enemies. Bit AoE damage there as well. So the next one is Arcane Shield, which has a 45-second cooldown. So block attacks with an energy shield. If it blocks 3 attacks, it explodes for critical damage. So it lasts for 5 seconds, blocks attacks, and if it manages to block 3 attacks in that time, it's going to explode and do damage on a radius of 360 to 5 enemies around you. Let's try this out here. So obviously you got this for 5 seconds, and if you manage to absorb 3 attacks in that time, it's going to explode and damage everyone around you, so that's cool. So here we have our final 2 utility skills. So first up, Arcane Power, which has a 45-second cooldown. So you and nearby allies do critical damage with your next few attacks. Each stack of Arcane Power grants bonus ferocity. So us and up to 5 allied targets in a radius of 240 around you are going to do critical damage with your next few attacks. So that's pretty cool. So that gives us Arcane Power for 30 seconds as well, which gives us 75 ferocity. So that's cool. So let's try this out. There you go. So as we can see, boom, critical hits on the 4 attacks. So you've got 30 seconds to use that, and then you can use all 4 of those. And each stack of Arcane Power grants bonus ferocity. So while you have that on, you're going to have that bonus ferocity as well. So that's really cool. So the last one is Arcane Blast. So this is a another ammo skill with 2 counts. With a 1 second cooldown between the counts, but the count recharges 20 seconds. So blast your foe with energy for critical damage. So it's got a range of 1500, which is an unusually large range. It blasts the foe, does a decent amount of damage, and you can use it twice quite quickly. So 20-second cooldown between it. So it just shoots it out, and then I can see once again I can use it pretty much straight away. But then I do have to wait for the 20-second count recharge to go through. Alright, so that's actually all of the utility skills for the Elementalist. So the next thing I want to have a look at are the elite skills. Okay, so now I want to have a look at the elite skills for the Elementalist. So first up, we've got Glyph of Elementals, which has a 90-second cooldown. So I'll have a look at what different effect this has for each attunement. So if you remember, when we were going for the utility skills, we had a Glyph of Lesser Elementals. So it does pretty much exactly the same as that, but instead of summoning a lesser elemental, we summon a proper elemental. So it lasts for 120 seconds, and with the fire attunement, you summon a fire elemental, which deals damage. Water attunement, you summon an ice elemental that deals damage and heals. With the air attunement, you summon an air elemental that deals damage and stuns. And with the earth attunement, you get an earth elemental that deals damage and is hard to kill. So all of them are the same. They all last for 120 seconds, 2 minutes. They've all got a 90-second cooldown, but obviously the effects are slightly different. So I'm going to try out the fire elemental now and see what this looks like. Come on in. Boom, there you go. So we've got our fire elemental. We attack this enemy. Boom, there you go. You can see that he's already starting to set everyone on fire. So that's pretty cool there. So if you like to have like sort of like a pet and stuff with you, you can have this pretty much like a lot of the time here. And when you've got them active, you've got Flame Barrage here on the when you're in the fire attunement, which is command your fire elemental to bombard its target and surrounding foes with burning bolts, and then release a burst of fire around itself. So let's try that out, shall we? Boom, nice. That's really awesome. Okay, so next up we have an elite conjure skill, which should be pretty cool. So this is Conjure Fiery Greatsword, and it has a 180-second cooldown. So manifest a fiery greatsword in your hands and at a target location. When it lands, it damages and burns foes. Wielders of this weapon gain increased power and condition damage, and cast lesser fire eruption at regular intervals on random enemies. So that's quite a lot to take in. So much like the other conjure skills, you're going to place it down. You're going to get the fiery greatsword in your hands, which is going to give you 5 new weapon skills to use. You're also going to drop one where you place it, where your allies can pick it up and use those skills as well. Where it drops, it will be doing a damage to enemies nearby, as well as setting fire to them as well, so that's cool. While you're wielding the weapon, you'll have extra power and condition damage. and then while you've got it wielded, during regular intervals you'll be casting Lesser Fiery Eruption, which will create fissures under nearby enemies, set them on fire and just doing even more burning damage. Let's try this out now. I'm not going to go into all of the new the skills it gives you in detail, but I'll show them all off. So if I place this down on this unlucky guy here, and we can try it out. Alright, so first up we've got Flame Wave, which is shoot a fireball at your foe with each swing. Next is Fiery Eruption, which ram your sword into the ground and make fire erupt on the enemy. Then you've got Fiery Whirl, which is advance forward, slashing foes along the way, which is cool. And then you've got Fiery Rush, which is charging your foe. And then number 5, Firestorms, cooldown of Firestorm on the target. Let's try it on that guy, which is nice there. It's just going to do a bunch of damage to the enemy. So there's quite a few powerful abilities. So that lasts for 30 seconds in total, and you can use those abilities as much as you want in that 30 seconds. Okay, so the final elite skill that we've got to look at is Tornado, which has a 120-second cooldown. So gain stability and shapeshift into a tornado that damages and launches foes. So you're going to turn into a tornado, which is going to give you some cool tornado skills to use. It's going to damage enemies, so you can move around while using it. You've got stability, so you can't be knocked down and stuff like that. It lasts for 10 seconds, and the stability and the damage pulses every 3 seconds, and it affects enemies on a radius of 240 around you. And obviously you can move around, so you can go closer to enemies and all that. So this is pretty cool, shapeshift into a tornado, so I want to try this out. So let's have a look and see what it does. So let's have a go. Oh, boom, there we go. And you've got a few skills that you can use to affect the enemies around you. Oh my god. So do try those out. They're pretty cool, but yeah, it's quite a loud one. It's pretty cool. You can move around the battlefield, you know, as a tornado. Who doesn't want to do that? And affecting on the radius quite big around you. You're going to be doing damage, giving yourself stability, as well as being able to use some damaging effects on the enemies as well. So that's a pretty cool elite skill as well. So that's all of the elite skills for the Elementalist. So the next thing I want to talk about are the unique profession mechanics. Okay, so now I want to talk about the unique profession mechanics for the Elementalist. So one of the things that is unique about the Elementalist is the fact that it can only have one weapon set equipped in combat. This, along with the Engineer, are the only classes that actually have that. So you may be thinking that's a bit of a negative, so you know you can only have one weapon set, so you can't weapon swap in combat. But to be honest, there's quite a good reason for this, so you may have figured it out as we're going through it. But basically each weapon set has 4 sets of skills, as we have 4 separate attunements. So although you can't switch between the weapon sets, so you don't have the 10 weapon skills people normally have, you actually have 20 weapon skills, because you've got your 5 and then you've got the 4 attunements, and they're all completely different skills and everything like that. So to be honest, you've probably got more skills than you would otherwise have. So to be honest, it's not really a negative. I mean, I think if you could weapon swap as well, one, it would be crazy, maybe a bit overpowered, but to be honest, you'd never be able to use all those skills. The cooldowns would be too quick, and you just have too many skills to learn, and I don't think many people would be playing the Elementalist. So to be fair, it does make it a little bit easier that you've only got to learn one weapon, and then you just switch between the attunements, and maybe there'll be attunements that you probably use more than others as well. You won't necessarily rinse the skills on every single one of the bars. It will depend on the situation, because each attunement does have things that it's particularly good at and things that it's not as good at, and we'll go through that in a second. So first up, you've got the fire attunement. So as you can see, attuned to fire, gaining heavy damage and burning abilities. So fire attunement is sort of the main damage dealing attunement. So if you're looking for DPS, this is going to be one that you're going to focus on quite heavily. So like I say, heavy damage, and obviously a lot of the abilities are going to be putting burning on the enemy. So a bit of damage over time as well, but a lot of like initial impact damage as well, and some cool AoE skills go along with this one. Your F2 is your water attunement. So attuned to water, gaining superior support and healing abilities. So yeah, water is predominantly a healing attunement, so there's a lot of good support abilities that you can use in a group, and ones that you can use to heal yourself and allies. It's not exclusively that. I mean, there's a couple of cool skills on here which do damage as well, so you might want to mix that into your rotation. But to be honest, yeah, it's predominantly going to be for healing. So you may not be whacking this one out to do low if you're just doing like a pure power build. You may not be using this all the time, but there are some good abilities that do healing and some that do damage as well. Your F3 is your air attunement. So attuned to air, gaining heavy damage and control abilities. So this one quite damage orientated as well, but then a lot of control abilities as well. So things about movement, so stopping the enemy's movement, or increasing your movement, making you faster, jumping around and stuff like that. So a lot of this one is based around movement, moving around quickly and stuff like that. So that's what that one does. So quite good maybe if you need to control groups of enemies and move them around in a certain way. And then lastly, you've got the Earth attunement, which is attuned to Earth, gaining superior damage over time and defensive abilities. Yeah, so this one focuses mainly on damage over time abilities, so it does a lot of bleeding and stuff like that, so you can put those conditions to do damage over time. Not a lot of like initial impact damage. And then defensive abilities as well, like ones that give you like stone armor and block attacks and give you extra toughness and stuff like that to make you harder to kill. So once again, may not be using this one all the time if you've got like a power build or something like that. But you know, certainly if you can switch to this one if you're getting like, you know, completely caned. And I suppose it means that you're never going to be a completely squishy character, because you can always go to your Earth attunement and start whacking out some of those defensive abilities. So that's pretty cool. So that's the main thing that you get. There's no sort of like extra abilities that you can cast on here like you normally get above your bar, because they are replaced by the attunements. So to be honest, that's most of them. And to be honest, one of the reasons why people say the Elementalist is one of the harder classes to play is probably because you've got all of these different skills to learn, different attunements to do different things. So you need to keep up with which skills you want to use and which ones you don't. And then we saw as well, we've got the conjure abilities on the utility and an elite as well, and that gives you a whole new set of weapon skills as well. Not that the Elementalist really needs that, so that's even more skills to learn potentially if you want to use those. So yeah, a really fun class to play, but to be fair, maybe a little bit complicated if you're a new player, maybe a lot of things to learn, but it's definitely worth giving a go. So I think that pretty much covers everything for the unique profession mechanics. So the next thing I want to do is I want to talk about the individual traits within the specializations for the Elementalist. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about are the specializations. So I'm going to have a look at all 5 of the core specializations and see the individual traits within them to see how you can make yourself even more powerful. So I'm going to start with the fire attunement. So you'll notice that there is, with the fire specialization, you'll notice there is actually a specialization for each attunement. So if you do know which attunements you want to be focusing on, then they are definitely the specializations you're going to want to choose. So here we have the fire one. So the first passive on this is Empowering Flame. So gain power while in fire attunement. So an extra 150 power if you've got your F1 active. Next up, Burning Precision. So burning you inflict has increased duration and your critical hits gain a chance to inflict burning. So increased duration on your burning is obviously really good if you're using your fire attunement a lot. And then your critical hits gain additional chance to inflict burning, so you're just going to be doing that even more. So Conjurer. So gain fire aura when an ally picks up a conjured weapon. Conjure weapon abilities have reduced recharge. So if you do have any of those conjure abilities on your bar, it's going to reduce the recharge by 20%, which is good. And then fire aura is given to anyone who picks it up, which enveloped in a fiery shield that burns foes, grants might each time you're struck. So it just buffs any allies that pick up your weapons. Here you've got Burning Fire. So cast Lesser Cleansing Fire when you have a number of conditions on you. So when you get to 3 conditions on you, you're going to cast a spell which is going to cure conditions and burn foes. Next passive is Sunspot. So gain a fire aura and damage nearby foes when you attune to fire. So whenever you move over to fire, you're going to gain a fire aura which is going to damage all the foes around you, which is pretty cool. Next up, Burning Rage. So Sunspot inflicts burning and its radius is increased. Your condition damage is increased. So that buffs this Sunspot thing we just spoke about there, as well as increasing your condition damage as well. Smothering Auras. So fire auras have increased duration. Applying auras to allies removes conditions, and transmuting auras removes conditions from nearby allies. So So here you've got Power Overwhelming. So while at or above the might threshold, gain increased power. Power bonuses are doubled while attuned to fire. So the stack threshold's 8, so when you get 8 or more might stacks, you're going to gain increased power, and that bonus is doubled while you're in the fire attunement as well. Last passive here is Pyromancer's Training. So your fire weapon skills gain reduced recharge, deal more damage to burning foes. So all of your 1 to 5 abilities when you're in F1 is going to have a 20% reduced recharge, and you're going to be doing 10% extra damage to burning foes. Persisting Flames. Fire shields created by weapon skills last longer. Your damage is increased whenever your fire fields hit a foe. So it's going to buff your fire fields a bit there. Pyromancer's Poisons. So gain might for using any skill while attuned to fire. When leaving fire attunement or successfully completing a fire overload, unleash a flame expulsion. Next is Blinding Ashes. So inflict blindness on foes you burn. So any foes you burn, which can be quite a lot, you're also going to be putting blindness on them, so they're going to miss. So that's really good actually, and that will buff you quite a lot, because you're going to, if you want to use fire a lot, you're going to be putting burning on people a hell of a lot. So next up is Water. So that obviously links with the F2 Water attunement. So first passive, you've got Soothing Mist. So you and nearby allies recover health while you're attuned to water. So just by having yourself in your F2 attunement, you and your allies are going to be gaining some healing, so that's nice. First one here is Soothing Ice. So gain regeneration and frost aura when critically hit. So if enemy hits you with a critical hit, you're going to gain health regen, and you're going to get frost aura as well, which is going to reduce your incoming damage. Piercing Shards. So vulnerability you inflict has increased duration. Deal increased damage to vulnerable foes. Damage bonus is doubled while attuned to water. So yeah, so vulnerability durations increase, as well as damage increase to people who are vulnerable as well. Stop, drop and roll. So dodging removes burning and chilled from nearby allies. So just by dodging around, you're going to be getting rid of burning and chilled from allies within a radius of 240 around you. Next passive is Healing Ripple. So heal nearby allies when attuning to water. So whenever you switch to your F2 attunement, you're going to be healing allies around you. Soothing Disruption. So cantrips gain reduced recharge and grant boons. So if you have any cantrip abilities on your bar, which we did have a look at, you're going to have reduced recharge of 20% on them, as well as granting you regen and vigor when you use them. Cleansing Wave. So remove conditions from nearby allies when attuning to water. So when you swap to your F2, yep, you're going to be removing conditions of nearby allies. Flow Like Water. Deal increased damage when your health is above the threshold. Blocking or evading an attack heals you. So as long as your health is above 75%, you're going to be dealing increased damage of extra 5%. And blocking or evading an attack gives you an extra bit of healing as well. Last passive is Aquamancer's Training. So increase healing to other allies. Water weapon skills gain reduced recharge. So any of your 1 to 5 abilities in your F2 attunement will get a 20% reduction in their recharge, as well as a 15% effectiveness increase on your healing to other allies. So Cleansing Water. Cleanse conditions from allies you grant regeneration to. So if you have any skills that give regen to nearby allies, you're also going to be removing conditions as well. Powerful Aura. Any aura you grant yourself is granted to nearby allies. And lastly, Soothing Power. So Soothing Mist is more effective. So increases the effectiveness of your Soothing Mist ability by 100%. Next up is your Air Specialization, which links with your F3 Air attunement. First passive is Zephyr's Speed. So move faster while attuned to air. So just by having the air attunement on, you're going to be having a 25% movement speed increase. Zephyr's Boon. So grant boons to allies you grant auras to. So whenever you grant an aura to an ally, you're going to be giving them Fury and Swiftness as well. 1 with air, so gain super speed when attuning to air. Ferocious winds, gain ferocity based on your precision. So you'll gain 7% of your precision as ferocity, so that's extra critical hit damage. Electric discharge, strike your target with a bolt of lightning when attuning to air. So whenever you move to your F2, you're going to be striking your target with a nice bolt of lightning there, which is going to do damage and inflict vulnerability. Inscription, so gain a boon upon casting a glyph based on your attunement. Glyphs gain reduced recharge. So as you can see, based on what attunement you're in, you're going to be getting a nice boon when you cast a glyph. So if you're in fire, you're going to give yourself might, water, regen, air, swiftness, and earth protection. And also your glyphs have a 20% reduced recharge as well. So if you have a couple of glyphs on your bar, that's probably well worth having. Raging Storm, so critically striking a foe grants fury. Gain ferocity while under the effects of fury. So just by getting any critical hits, you're going to be giving yourself fury there as well, and that buffs that up even more with some extra ferocity. Storm Soul, deal increased damage to disabled foes. Outgoing stun duration increases. So if you've got a lot of things that stun enemies, which you do in the air attunement, you know, that's going to increase the duration of that by 33%, and obviously an extra 10% damage as well to disabled foes. So your last passive here is Aeromancer's Training. So gain ferocity and gain additional ferocity while attuned to air. Air weapon skills get a reduced recharge time. So you get an extra 150 ferocity just by having this on here, and an extra 150 ferocity on top of that for being in the air attunement. And then air weapon skills get a reduced recharge of 20% as well. Okay, so Bolt to the Heart. So deal increased damage to enemies below the health threshold. So that's an extra 20% damage to enemies below 50% health. Fresh Air. Recharge air attunement on a critical hit. Gain a ferocity boost when attuning to air. So if you just switched out your air attunement and it's on cooldown, you're going to recharge that, you're going to get rid of that cooldown completely if you get a critical hit. And you're going to get a ferocity boost when you move over to your air attunement for 5 seconds as well. Last up, you've got Lightning Rod. So cast Lightning Rod when you disable a foe. So Lightning Rod is to cool down a lightning on a disabled foe, which is going to do damage and weakness. Okay, so next up we have Arcane. So this is the only one of the specializations that doesn't specifically apply to an attunement. So Arcane Prowess. Gain might when you switch attunements. So whenever you switch between any of the attunements there, you're going to get a few stacks of might there as well. Arcane Precision. Your critical strikes have a chance to inflict a condition based on your attunement. So whenever you critically strike an enemy, you're going to have a 33% chance to inflict a condition based on your attunement. That's burning in fire attunement, vulnerability in water attunement, weakness in air attunement, and bleeding in earth attunement. Renewing Stamina. So gain vigor when you critically strike a foe. Arcane Restoration. Swapping attunements restores health. So whenever you switch between the attunements there, you're going to get a little health boost. Elemental Attunement. So grant a boon to nearby allies when changing attunements. So whenever you change between an attunement, you're going to be gaining. You're going to give a boon to allies, and it lists there which boons depending on the specific attunements. Arcane Resurrection. So cast Geyser when you begin reviving a downed ally. Geyser now partially revives downed allies. When you begin reviving an ally, you gain an aura based on your attunement. So when you start, basically it's going to make you a bit harder to kill when you're reviving a downed ally. So this will come into effect whenever you try and revive a downed ally. So that's a pretty cool effect there when working in a team. Elemental Lockdown. When you disable a foe, gain a boon based upon your current attunement. So whenever you use a disability effect, you're going to gain a boon, and they're listed there depending on the attunement. Final Shielding. So cast Lesser Arcane Shield when struck while below the health threshold. So whenever anyone hits you when you're below 50% health, you're going to block attacks with an energy shield. If it blocks 3 attacks, it explodes. Bear in mind that effect can only take effect once every 300 seconds. Elemental enchantment. So gain concentration and your attunements gain reduced recharge. So you get an extra 120 concentration for having this, and you gain reduced. Your attunements gain a reduced recharge of 15%. Next up is evasive arcana. So cast a skill when you dodge based on your attunement. So whenever when you're dodging around, you're going to have a skill cast depending on your attunement, and if you right click on your mouse, it will show you all of those different ones depending on the attunement, and you can read those. So this one is Elemental Surge. Arcane skills gain reduced recharge, grant increased ferocity, and inflict a condition based on your attunement. So there you go. So your arcane skills, which is a particular type of skill that we looked at earlier, they're going to have reduced recharge by 20%. They're going to grant you increased ferocity, and you're going to inflict those conditions whenever you use an arcane skill, and there's a different condition for each attunement. And finally, Bountiful Power. So deal increased damage for each boon on you. So a damage increase of 2% for every boon you have on you. So lastly, we have the Earth specialization, which links with your F4 Earth attunement. So your first passive is Stone Flesh. So gain damage reduction while attuned to Earth. So a 7% damage reduction just for being in your F4. So here you have Earth's Embrace. So cast Armor of Earth when struck while below the health threshold. So whenever anyone hits you while you're below 50% health, you're going to cast a spell which is going to protect yourself with Earth Armor and gain protection and stability. Serrated Stones. Bleeding you inflict has increased duration. Deal increased damage to bleeding foes. So 20% duration increase there on bleeding you inflict, and you're going to do 5% extra damage to if you hit an enemy that is bleeding. Elemental Shielding. Auras you grant to allies also grant protection, so that's just an extra buff if you put an aura on an ally. Earthen Blast. So damage and cripple nearby foes when attuning to Earth. So whenever you switch to your F4, you're going to be doing a bit of damage and applying cripple to any enemies around you. Strength of Stone. Gain condition damage based on your toughness. Inflict bleeding when you immobilize a foe. So you're going to gain some extra condition damage there, and it's going to be based on your toughness. So a 10% portion of that, 10% of your toughness added to your condition damage, and you're going to inflict bleeding whenever you immobilize a foe. Rock Solid. Grant stability to nearby allies when attuning to Earth. So whenever you move to your F4 attunement, you're going to give stability to your allies. Earthen Blessing. Decrease the duration of movement impairing conditions applied to you. Restore endurance when you receive one of these conditions. Okay, so this just means that movement impairing conditions on you won't last as long, and when someone does put shield, cripple or immobilize on you, you're going to restore some of your endurance bar. Your final passive here is Geomancer's Training. So you receive less damage from nearby foes. Earth weapon skills gain reduced recharge. So a damage reduction of 10% from nearby foes, and Earth weapon skills. And by the way, that is a range of 360 around you. You get that 10% damage reduction there, and then you get a 20% recharge reduction on any of your Earth weapon skills. So your 1 to 5 skills while you're in your F4 attunement. So here you've got Diamond Skin. So remove conditions when struck while your health is above the threshold. So whenever your health is above 75%, someone hits you, you're going to have conditions removed. Written in Stone. So Signets gain reduced recharge and continue to grant their passive bonuses while recharging. So obviously when I was showing you off the Signets earlier, I always said that whenever they're on cooldown, they you won't get the passive effect. But this actually reverses that, so you do, while also giving them an extra 20% reduced recharge as well. Finally, you've got Stone Heart, which is you cannot be critically hit while attuned to Earth. So whenever you're in your Earth attunement, your F4 attunement, you can't actually have any critical hits put on you. So that's quite a powerful one there to stop enemies from doing big hits on you. Alright, so that's all 5 of the core specializations and all of the traits. So the last thing I want to do is I want to throw together a quick Elementalist build and do a combat demonstration for you so you can see what it looks like when it all comes together. Alright, so I've thrown together a quick Elementalist build. I've got the two-handed staff equipped, so that's my one weapon, and I'll obviously switch between the attunements as I go. This build's more based on the fire and the air attunement, more of a damage based build, but I'll show off the other skills as well. I've got a nice mixture here of arcane, glyphs, conjure abilities and cantrips, so a bit of everything there just to try it all out. So let's see how this goes. Alright, so I think that shows off most of the Elementalist there, so I think that pretty much covers everything. If you have any more questions about the Elementalist, then do leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. If you want to watch a video on any specific class or elite specialization, then check out my channel, as I've nearly done all of them now. And also, if you want to watch a video that goes through all of the classes and elite specs in one video that's a bit more condensed, then I've got that on my channel as well, so check that out. So thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe to be kept up to date, and I'll see you later.